A quilted dish towel makes a perfect gift for anybody on your list. What a great gift to give to a mail carrier, your newspaper boy, or your favorite neighbor. To start, you'll need roughly a 12 by 10 piece of fabric, a front, a back, and some batting. Then mark it how you would like to quilt it. I'm going to quilt mine in diagonal 1-inch lines, and then we will cut it up after we have it all quilted. Here I have my machine set up with a walking foot. I have used a regular standard foot on my machine while machine quilting something like this. So I'm just going to follow my line. Okay, since I'm working on such a small piece, if I was working on a larger piece, I would probably mark all of my lines. And you can use a Hera marker for that, or just a sharp tool to indent your fabric. I'm working on a fairly small piece, so I'm not going to mark all of the lines. And it doesn't have to be exactly straight. It's very forgiving. Trust me, when we get to the end and I show you where you cut out the pattern you need, it's not going to matter. So I'm going to put a 1-inch. This square here is 1 inch, so I'm going to put a line there. Roughly line up my needle. Like I said, it doesn't have to be exact. It's pretty forgiving. And just eyeball it the best I can to go to the other side. And I'm going to keep quilting in this matter until I get this all quilted this direction. And then we'll flip it and we'll do lines the other direction. Okay, I got my last few lines to stitch here. So I'm lining up my last stitch line on this line. And I know that this edge I want to be roughly where my needle is. So my lines are roughly 1 inch apart. So does not need to be exact at all. I'm literally just eyeballing it. Nothing needs to be lined up. Do not fret that my edges are not the same. When I show you the pattern we're going to cut, it'll all make sense. I'm just going to stitch my last couple lines. Honestly, I probably don't even need to do the last line, but I'm going to go ahead and do it anyway. Just a rough eyeball. This would be a great scrap buster project. Okay, so now we are quilted. It doesn't even matter if my lines are straight. It doesn't matter if my fabric was straight, because we're going to be cutting our pattern out of the center. So let's go cut this. Okay, so here's my fabric. We're back at my cutting table. I'm going to use my big 60 mil since we're cutting through batting and everything. This is my template I made. I took a towel, a quilted dish towel that my mom had gifted me, and made this template. Now I went ahead and added my 1/4 inch. And you probably can't read my writing. I wrote in here on pencil. So I will put the dimensions in the description. 4 1/4 inch, 6 3/4. I can't even read that. 5 3/4. And then, like I said, I've already included the 1/4 inch seam allowance for like binding and all that within the whole thing. So I made it a 1/4 inch bigger than what the actual finished product was that I already had. Just so that when I folded it up and did the binding, it all looks really nice. Okay, so here's our template. I will put the dimensions of this in the description. See, we have plenty of room to work with, so my edges are not going to matter. The straightness of my lines, once you get it all quilted as a whole, do not matter. So what we're going to do is you're going to trace. You don't need, if it doesn't mark all the way, it's not a big deal because you have a little bit of a line to follow. This is one of those pens that disappears when you iron it. And then what you're going to do is you're going to take the template, trace it this way, and then you're going to flip it over. You're going to line up your ends. And you're going to do that again. It doesn't have to be exact. You're going to cut this up. And then we'll assemble. Okay. I don't think I pressed very hard. There we go. So we'll get this all cut out, and then I'll show you the next step. Okay, here I have my dish towel. I do not unfold it. I just leave it as it is. I kind of use this crease as my guide. Now I need to decide what side do I want out. Do I want this out so that when my dish towel hangs it looks like this? And I think so. So that means this needs to go face up. We're going to crease it. Let's just make it so we get a little bit of a crease line. And then we have the crease of our towel. Okay, so you'll need to determine, if you're doing two different fabrics, determine which one you want up. Whichever fabric you want to face out when you get the towel completed, put facing up. So I'm taking the seam of my towel, you just kind of have to kind of eyeball it, and I kind of folded my quilted part in half. Now I'm going to stitch this down, and then I'll show you what it looks like after. Okay, here we are at the machine. I have this all ready to stitch. I'm going to slow my machine down a little. I tend to sew very fast, so we're just going to stitch this. Everything is pretty forgiving with this, so you don't have to be too perfect and precise. Just kind of let it be what it'll be. I'm going to give my edges a little back stitch. And I'll meet you back at the cutting table. Okay, we got it stitched. Fold it back together. Now we got this. Next, we're going to bind it. So next we're going to make binding strips, and then we'll make handles for it to tie on a fridge or a stove. Okay, so the next step for a quilted dish towel is going to be to make our binding. I cut these pieces out of a fat quarter. So I saved what was left of my fat quarter, and I cut 2-inch strips, wide strips of the width of the fat quarter. Go ahead and cut 4 if you want it to all coordinate. 2 for your ties and 2 for your binding. Let's go make some binding. Okay, now I have my 2 binding strips pieced together end to end. So I'm just going to press my binding strips together. And then I'll meet you back at the machine and show you how easy and quick it is to add your binding to your quilted dish towel. I'd like to interrupt this video to show you our beautiful snow coming down today. It's a perfect day to be sewing. Let's attach some binding. Okay. I love me some clips. Really only need 2. Let's let this hang over. I'm just attaching the binding on the inside. This is just how I did mine. You can always change things up. I'm going to clip there, and then I'm going to clip closer to the fold where the natural fold was on the towel. So this is my tail I'm going to leave. Move that up here. I'm not going to sew here to here. I'm going to leave this tail to attach together. Okay, now to get things situated under the machine. Let's get things repositioned. I'm going to fold the towel up and back. I have a tip. I highly recommend having tweezers at all times. I use my tweezers every day. Okay. Get this lined up. We'll start about here. I gotta line it up with I know where my 1/4-inch mark is. Okay, I'm gonna give myself a little back stitch. This is something else I would also really slow down if your machine has a speed control to slow it down. I'm going to lift my presser foot only. I'm going to pivot my piece. Then I'm going to lift my needle and pull it towards me. And I'm going to fold back my binding, just like you would on a regular quilt. I will link to my binding tutorial in the notes. Set back down. Foot only, pivot. Then I will pick up my needle, pull it towards me, fold my binding over so I get line it up with the edge. Line it back up with my 1/4 inch seam mark. Stop and adjust as often as you need to when you're doing any kind of binding. And definitely slow your machine down, take your time. Okay, here we are. We got the first round of it stitched on. Now we need to combine our ends. I feel like this is the part where people get really intimidated. And we're going to work through this together. This is a trick I learned somewhere on YouTube, in YouTube world, I don't know. Cut a piece of your binding. Actually, I didn't even cut enough. I don't want it to go that far. What you're going to do is, I'm going to cut. You want your binding ends to overlap the same width as your binding strip. So if your binding's 2 inches, like we have here, we want it to overlap 2 inches. If your binding's 2.5 inches, you want it to overlap 2.5 inches. Okay, so we're going to lay one binding strip down flat. I'll lay the other one over on top of it. Now, I will admit, I always mess up this part. I always have a little too much binding. And then I end up with this little pucker when I come to the end. So, here's your bottom binding. And here's my top binding. You want them to overlap 2 inches. Get my little fabric open here. I got blue on blue. I have my 2 inch piece of scrap, and so I want my binding to overlap 2 inches. I'm going to pull this taut, trying to avoid getting that pucker. And I'm going to cut my binding. That's the scary part. I've cut it. Now what do I do? This is, to me, the hardest part, but it's much better than I'm much better than I used to be. So we're going to lay these. You're going to pull the top one face down. Obviously my fabrics are the same on both sides, but you would do it not face down, back side down. So you do right sides together like so. I have this clipped and clipped some more. So I have to squeeze this under my machine, and I'm going to sew top to bottom. And I'll be right back. Okay, we might have it. Just see how much I have. Got my ends connected. Doesn't always look the prettiest at this point, but trust me when I say it's very forgiving. And we're going to be okay in the end. So I love tweezers so much for the machine. Now let's move our towel back out of the way. Okay, I think we're good. Yep, we are good. Now, I will take this and fold it over, and I will clip all the way around, and then we'll stitch it from the top. All right, let's attach some binding. Again, take your time. If your machine has speed control, slow it down. Stitch close to the inside edge of your binding. And I always like to have tweezers to help hold my binding. So let's get this started. I'm going to stop, remove my clips. I'm going to hold my corner, make sure I got it held where I want it. Take your time. Go. Foot only. Pivot, leave your needle down. So when you begin stitching again, you're good to go. Get that tightened down a little bit. I think it might have slipped a little on my corner, but I think we're going to be okay. This would make a great hostess gift if you're attending a holiday party. What a fun little gift to give someone. You could tie it around a bottle of wine. You could put it with some new cooking utensils. All right, I'm going to finish this up, and then I'll meet you back here in just a second. All right, I got all the binding on. Looks pretty good. Now we're going to make the ties. So let's work on that. What I like to do is I make a tube, and then I turn it inside out with a tube turner. I will link to these. There's 3 different sizes that come in this pack. I will have the link to them in the description below. Stitching up the last little bit of my fabric tube. Now let's turn them. I'm not going to lie, I have a love-hate relationship with these fabric turners. I just don't think I do them correctly. So I put the plastic tube with the hole in it inside the tube. And you're supposed to be able to put this in here and turn it. But mine is really, I don't know if it's my fabric. It will go, but it's very difficult for me to do. Okay, I finally got it going. So then I just pull, and there it is. So then I'll give these a good press at the iron. And then the next thing we're going to do is attach our ties, and you're going to have a completed dish towel. All right, my ties are pressed. We're going to stick 2 ends together. We're going to stick it inside the towel. Kind of eyeball it, center it the best you can. And then we're going to clip this all shut. And then we're just going to stitch over where the ties are. Now, I left this open on mine. You could stitch all the way around. I kind of like the way it looked. It just looked neat, and you can see the inside fabric. And I also thought, how fun to stick something in there. Some wooden spoons, some new cooking utensils, some candy. Make a great hostess gift. All right, let's stitch this close. We have our handle stitched in. Take your time with this. This is a little bit thicker. Like I said, you can stitch all the way around. I left mine open. Now, I would probably trim your handles a little bit. I don't have an exact measurement for these. Just long enough so they can, tie them over top of a stove handle or something. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold these over and I'm going to stitch these as well. These are a little harder too because they are pretty thick, so take your time when stitching these down. Okay, you did it. You made your quilted dish towel. What a great hostess gift this holiday season. Thanks for stopping by and spending time with me today. If you like this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. Hit subscribe and click that little bell so you get notified the next time I post something new. I'll see you in the next video.